Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session for today. We will be starting momentarily. Okay, so good morning again, and thank you for attending today's webinar hosted by the Education USA Eastern Caribbean Advisors. My name is Andrea Errol, and I am the Education USA Advisor for Antigua and Barbuda. And so today's session is to familiarize U.S. higher education institutions, as well as Education USA advisors with the Caribbean Examination Council. The Caribbean Examination Council is celebrating over 50 years, and today we are here to learn more, to interact with members of the team, and our presentation today will be led by Mr. Richard Rose, Corporate Marketing Manager for CXC, and he will give you more information as it relates to CXC, and I really hope that today that this session will benefit all of us as we continue to expose students to the best study options and help them to build their personal potential. So thank you again for attending, and Mr. Rose, I turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mrs. Andrea Errol. So good morning again. On behalf of Dr. Wayne Wesley, Registrar and CEO of CXC, Dr. Eduardo Ali, Pro-Registrar and Deputy CEO of CXC, the Executive Management Team and staff of CXC, welcome to this webinar hosted by Education USA. And this presentation will be an overview of CXC and its qualifications for matriculation. I'd also like to acknowledge Ms. Andrea Errol, Education USA Advisor for Antigua and Barbuda, Mrs. Claudia Jack, Manager of Syllabus and Curriculum Development, Dr. Brenda Lee Cato, Manager Examinations Development and Production, and both Mrs. Jack and Dr. Brenda Lee Cato will be available to answer questions at the end of the presentation. I also acknowledge my colleagues from the marketing and client relations team at CXC, Mrs. Michelle Narising and Mr. Matthew Tull, and from public relations, Ms. Foley and Tate. So I'm going to go straight into the presentation. And let's see how we... One moment, please. Yes, apologies for that slight technical hitch there. So my presentation will cover an overview of CXC, CXC's qualifications, strengthening partnerships, and recognition and articulation. So the Caribbean Examination Council was established in 1972 under agreement by the participation governments in the Caribbean community, CARICOM. And as Mrs. Errol just mentioned, CXC celebrated its 50th anniversary recently. CXC's authority and mandate. So this gives you some background and purpose. So agreement of governments as the regional assessment body since 1972. CXC conducts such examinations that it may think appropriate and award certificates and diplomas on the results of the examinations so conducted. The Caribbean Community CARICOM is a grouping of 20 countries, 15 member states, and 5 associate members. So these are the member states. I won't list all of them: Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Grenada, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Lucia, etc. And the associate members: Anguilla, Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, and Turks and Caicos. CXC has 16 participating countries, so they would be the countries that signed the original agreement, and you can see them there. But CXC also collaborates with countries in the Dutch Caribbean, Curacao, Saba, St. Eustatius, and St. Martin, as well as Suriname. It's important to get some background details on CXC and its vision and mission. So CXC's vision: a digitally transformed enterprise providing quality, relevant, and globally recognized educational services. And its mission: we develop the human capital of our Caribbean people through partnerships for global competitiveness. And I'll come on to partnerships later on. CXC is a regional examining body that provides examinations for secondary and post-secondary candidates in Caribbean countries. CXC offers a wide range of subjects in academic, technical, and vocational areas for candidates of varying ages, abilities, and interests. In addition, CXC provides services to educational institutions in the development of syllabuses, examinations, and examinations administration. I'm noticing there's a hand up at this time. Could I ask that any questions wait until the end of the presentation? So CXC's qualifications. So starting at the primary level, Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, CPA, Caribbean Certificate of Secondary Level Competence, CCSLC, Caribbean Vocational Qualifications, CVQ, Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC, Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examinations, CAPE. So you're probably more familiar with CSEC and CAPE, and CXC's associate degree, CXC AD. This slide gives you an overview of the key literacies at the different levels: foundational, CVQ, and I'll just read through a few of them so you understand the progression. So keeps at CPA, which is the primary level, key literacies required for learners exiting the primary school system, foundation blocks for secondary education. CCSLC, foundational program for secondary level, emphasis on competencies necessary for future success. At CSEC, completion of 5 years of secondary level, education, entry standards for further study or world of work. CAPE, pre-university program, foundation blocks for tertiary education. And CXC, associate degree, facilitates advanced job placement or career focus and provides credits for degree level studies. So definition of terms, and this slide here is particularly noted because we know a question came up as it relates to curriculum and syllabus. So curriculum, the defined and prescribed courses of study in a school or college is determined by the country's respective Ministry of Education. Syllabuses, on the other hand, CXC designs and develops, outlining the topics to be studied for a specific course or subject. Pathways to secondary education in the Caribbean. So we have the exit primary level, Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, which you saw earlier, And for example, St. Lucia and several other countries across the Caribbean are sitting that exam. Primary exit profile, PEP, as called, is in Jamaica, and secondary entrance assessment examinations in Trinidad and Tobago. Secondary public and private education institutions, they obviously have the traditional subjects, technical and vocational subjects, and also focus on skills training. CXC and secondary level qualifications. The typical high school across the region's curriculum is organized according to two levels, lower secondary and upper secondary. So lower level, grades 7 to 9, generally the purview of the local Ministry of Education, covers all relevant subjects across disciplines to provide the necessary foundation, prepares students for specialization at the upper secondary level, and students complete internally developed assessments. So here we start with CXC's system of examinations. At CXC, we develop criteria and reference assessments. Performance is measured against specific objectives, set criteria or standards. Unlike norm reference, we do not measure against the cohort. So the grading system at CSEC, profile grades, knowledge, skills, and attitude. And as you can see from the slide, grade 1 would be equivalent to A, outstanding, 2, good, 3, fairly good, etc. And overall grade 1 to 3 are recognized as acceptable grades. CSEC general proficiency. This offers candidates deeper understanding of the topics covered in the subject. It is designed for learners who are likely to pursue studies in the subject beyond the secondary level. And if we look at CSEC technical proficiency, candidates with technical proficiency will have the skills and knowledge to pursue tertiary education or to be employed at the pre-technician level. As we move over to CAPE, modularize 1 and 2 unit courses. A1 unit courses consist of 3 modules. A2 unit courses consist of 6 modules. Overall, grades 1 to 5 are recognized as acceptable grades. So we now move to the grading system. So grade 1, CAPE, shows excellent grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. Grade 2 shows very good grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. 3 shows good grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. 4, satisfactory grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. 5 shows acceptable grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. 6 shows limited grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. And 7 shows very limited grasp of principles, concepts, and skills. CAPE qualifications, CAPE certificate, successful completion of any CAPE unit, CAPE diploma, successful completion of 6 units of CAPE, including Caribbean Studies, and CXC Associate degree, which I referenced earlier, successful completion of 10 CAPE units in a specific course of study. The CXC Associate degree, CAPE, the foundation of the CXC Associate degree, is recognized by a number of institutions. And I've just listed just a couple here. The University of the West Indies, the University of Ghana, the United Kingdom, NARIC, which is now UK ENIC, the Association of Indian Universities, several Canadian and United States universities. Recognition and articulation. So the Universities and Colleges Admission Service, UCAS, as some of you will be familiar with in the United Kingdom, accepts CSEC and CAPE, and they state the following as it relates to both qualifications. CSEC acceptable at the general or technical proficiency levels on a subject-for-subject basis in lieu of GCSE, provided that grade 3 or better has been achieved, would require to be supplemented by Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examinations, CAPE, GCE A levels, Scottish Highers or Advanced Highers, or a bridging course. And these other courses, as I've just mentioned, are UK-based courses, GCE A levels, Scottish Highers. As it relates to CAPE, in addition, CAPE acceptable at the 2-unit level in lieu of GCE advanced levels on a subject basis. The World Education Service equates the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC, to secondary school diploma in Canada and high school diploma in the US. And you will know that World Education Services is an international credential assessment agency. When it comes to the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examinations, WES recommends 8 undergraduate credits in the US and Canada for each subject passed at both the Unit 1 and Unit 2 levels. The American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admission Officers is a professional association with 11,000 plus members, representing 2,600 institutions from 40 countries. AcroEdge, the electronic database for global education, is a leading US resource for evaluation credentials. AcroEdge recommends CSEC to be comparable to completion of senior high school in the United States. As it relates to CAPE, each 1-unit CAPE course represents completion of 1 undergraduate freshman level course in the United States. Each 2-unit CAPE course represents completion of the introductory sequence of that subject in the United States. Credit may be awarded for academic subjects on a course-by-course basis. And just to reference some other recognition as well, the Association of Indian Universities, they recognize both CSEC and CAPE based on the same level, with minimum of 5 subjects in grades 1 to 2, with grade 10 examinations of an Indian board. And as it relates to CAPE, minimum of 5 subjects, and candidates having passed CAPE are eligible to join conventional degree programs at individual Indian universities. Strengthening partnerships through articulation agreements. CXC has been strengthening partnerships with international higher education institutions from across Europe, Asia, the Caribbean, and the United States and Canada for many years. And as you will all be familiar, an articulation agreement is an officially approved agreement that matches coursework between schools and institutions. These are designed to help students make a smooth transition when transferring with a CXC CAPE qualification to a degree granting institution. And just for reference, I pulled 2 quotes from two institutions and their comments as it relates to their relationship with CXC. We recognize the quality and rigor of the curriculum. We are delighted to ensure that the outstanding students from the Caribbean receive full credit for their hard work when they enrolled at Western Illinois University. And this was a quote from Dr. Martin Abraham, Provost and Academic Vice President of Western Illinois University. And here we have a quote from Dr. James Johnston, Interim President of Midwestern State University. So this was at the time of signing, which was, I think was 2 years ago. With this agreement, we also recognize and appreciate the Caribbean Examination Council for its exceptional quality and credentials. I say all this to characterize the importance of this articulation agreement to improve transferability of coursework to Midwestern State University and thereby better serve all of our students. As it relates to articulation agreements and other institutions from across the United States, Canada, and other jurisdictions, we have a list on our website. So that is the end of my presentation. So thank you so much. And I'll hand over now to Mrs. Andrea Errol if there are any questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rose, for that very informative presentation. And I believe all of us would have learned something, and there might be questions that you may have. And so we're now allowing for questions. You can either put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we will acknowledge you. Okay, I think I see a hand raised. Carrie?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for putting this training session together. It was really helpful. I was wondering if you have any examples of credentials, like what they should look like, how the transcripts are formatted, or anything like that, that either today or maybe you could provide in the future for what those credentials and equivalencies would look like when they are received by a university.
We were happy to provide that to Mrs. Errol after the session. And let me just say, colleagues, that as I referenced earlier, we have Mrs. Claudia Japp, Manager of Syllabus and Curriculum Development, and Dr. Brenda Lee Cato, Manager Examinations Development and Production, here to also answer questions. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions from the floor?
Hi, I don't necessarily have a question, but my name is Nadia.
We are barely hearing you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is Nadia Agret from Rutgers University. Not necessarily a question, but I think it would be helpful to have an equivalency sheet for university reps to understand the equivalence from between an A, a 1, a 2, or 3 in terms of the US in particular, at least for the US universities, what it's equated to in US standards.
Okay, so Mr. Rose and his team will take that on board. Any other questions? I do have a question here, Mr. Rose, and it is related to the other examination boards. And so the question is, can you provide any information on how former educational systems, that is IGCSE, the French Baccalaureate, impact the implementation and evaluation of the CXC curriculum in the 16 participating countries? And would it be accurate to say that CXC and specifically the CSEC can be evaluated the same way across the board, regardless of country of origin? So there are two questions there. One asking about, first one, asking about the systems that were formerly used in the region, and in some places, some of the non-English speaking Caribbean places, there are other systems that have been utilized. And also the second question is asking about whether whatever country the certificates are coming from, if they can be evaluated the same way across the board.
Mrs. Japp?
Yes, sir. Good morning, colleagues. As it relates to the alignment with the CXC subjects and those previously done, we know that for the GCE O-level, the examinations for the CSEC level would align with that for the GCE O-level, and those for the CAPE subjects would be aligned with that for the GCE A-level. So there is some alignment. There is indeed a significant alignment. They're actually matching up quite equally, because we would have been in a process where we reviewed what is being done by associate organizations, and we would have aligned our qualifications along those acceptable levels.
Thank you. And the second question was related to
Can I,
CXC.
Mrs. Errol, can I just
Yes.
come in quickly? One
Mhm.
of my slides referenced this, which spoke to the Universities and College Admission Service, UCAS, in the United Kingdom, which accepts both CSEC and CAPE, where they say CSEC is acceptable at the general or technical proficiency levels on a subject-by-subject basis in lieu of GCSE. So basically, they're saying that they're at the same level. And as it relates to CAPE, it is acceptable at the 2-unit level in lieu of GCE A levels on a subject-by-subject basis. I just wanted to add that as well. Thank you.
Okay. And CXC certificates, whether no matter which territory it's coming from, can they be evaluated the same way across the board? Can you just clarify that?
The students across the region do the same examination, and so the results would be comparable across the board.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Any other clarity? This is a good opportunity to get that information.
Hi, good morning. I'm sorry, I couldn't find the button to raise my hand. This is Angelique. I have 2 questions. One, I remember there was a slide saying the number of CAPE that would be like equivalent or acceptable for university. Is there a standard number of CSAC certificates that would be equivalent to a US diploma? Like, are you looking for the student to have 5 CSAC, for example, for it to be equivalent to completed a US diploma?
Mr. Rose?
So I just realized I was unmuted. What I'll do is I'm going to share that slide again.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, if you could just follow up if there are any other questions.
Okay, so we will get back to that question. And Mr. Rose, while you're looking at that question, in terms of, because I think there's a little more clarity is needed between the CSEC and CAPE, because I think it was the CAPE that was the equivalent. But in addition to that, what difference does it make if a student just did CAPE subjects and versus those who would have received the associate degree? So these are my questions, and I just figured that they would be best placed at the same point. Are there any other questions?
I'll leave Mrs. Jack or Dr. Cato to respond to that. I'm just pulling the slide at the moment.
Are there any other questions that anyone else would like to pose at this time?
Okay, so while they're thinking about the question, the students are allowed to do single units of CAPE, or they may choose to do both units for the particular subject. In our context, colleges will accept them. The four-year colleges will accept CSEC as certification for matriculation into their programs, and the 3-year colleges or universities will accept CAPE and CSEC, or a combination of CAPE and CSEC. What happens is that students may choose to do the associate degree, which requires them to complete 10 units across a cluster of subjects, and that is going to be related to their area of specialization. When they enter college with an associate degree, the consideration is given per unit covered in the same way as a student who would have done single units of CAPE. They would give them the credits based on what they would have covered. So while some universities will require them to have a certain number of CAPE subjects, usually 5 or 6 subjects within the area of specialization, they will also accept, some colleges will also accept CSEC, as long as they have the subjects that are aligned to the area of specialization that they wish to pursue. The only difference is that with CSEC, they're required to spend 4 years. With CAPE, they will get credit exemptions, which sometimes will add up to 2 years reduction of time spent doing the program. I don't know if that answers your question well enough.
All right, any follow-up questions based on that explanation? Not Carrie, I see your hand again. Do you have another question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. When we're looking at the CSEC certificate that comes, I understand that it's equivalent to a high school diploma. How many courses would be on like a transcript equivalent from a high school transcript if we're looking to see that?
Good morning. So for the CSEC, the candidates are allowed to choose any subject, any number of subject, and any type of subject. So they would be issued with a certificate based on the subjects that they have written. So we have 33 CSEC subjects. So students can choose 8 subjects from among those to pursue. So each person's certificate looks different because it's a record of the subjects that those students have done. So it is not like the US high school certificate where there's certain bands of subjects that they do and that everybody has to do those same subjects. Students are allowed to choose from among the vast number of subjects we have. So if you wanted to pursue the sciences, for example, you would do maths and English that are compulsory, and then you may do physics, chemistry, biology, and so on. If I wanted to focus on business, you do the compulsory maths and English, and I may choose principles of business, economics, principles of accounts, and so they are combined in that area based on the students' interests.
And that's all at the CSEC high school?
Yes, that's the CSEC
Yes.
level.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so it's generally recommended to take 8 courses for CSEC out of whatever 33 that's
no,
offered.
I just use it as an example. There's some persons, I think that schools would register for a minimum of 5, but students, we have had students who have done 20 subjects and 22 subjects. But generally you find students do around 8 or 9. But there's no limit as to how many they can do. You can choose to do 1. And that is what will be reflected on your certificate.
What would be the equivalent, what would be the minimum number needed to be the equivalent of a high school diploma?
Well, we would need to know what's in a high school diploma and to be able to make that comparison. I think Mr. Rose, the information he's looking for would be would assist in answering that question.
Hi, I don't have the ability to raise my hand for some reason. But Carrie, for the US, that would be a minimum of 5, including math and English.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Okay, yeah, I thought that there was a number.
So there is a minimum to get the equivalency, which is the 5, including math and English at the CSEC level. And students can take as much as 10 as, because there's
Mhm.
some ambitious students who will take, a lot more, as she just mentioned, but they need to have at least a minimum of 5.
That is correct.
Okay, and most programs, even what programs that we offer locally in the region, say our local colleges or any post-secondary programs that we have, most ask for a minimum of 5 for entry matriculation. So that's where the 5 comes about. But generally on our typical, the typical program for a school would allow most students to attempt at least 8 to 9 subjects. And depending on where you are, if you're in a faster track, you may go up to 12 or more. And honestly, some of our students also take the CSEC secondary subjects over a 2-year period. So that is also something to note. So you may not necessarily, for some schools, and speaking specifically for Antigua and Barbuda, the minimum a student may take is between 5 and 6. So there are different things that happens across the region. You're not limited to how many you can take. There's students who have taken 22 and 24. So that's an open option available.
Yes,
Mr.
it's
Rose?
mainly based on timetabling issues at school and allocation of resources, the teachers. And there are students who also would write some of their subjects as private candidates. So they would do them through the Ministry of Education to add to those as well. And yes, as you correctly said, there are a number of schools in Barbados and other territories that would do maths and English at the 4th form, the grade 10 level, and then they would write the others at the grade 11. So it's very flexible in terms of how many students can take and how they're allowed to do it.
Some students start as early as grade 9, depending on their own ambition towards what they want to achieve. And they may enter as private candidates or from their own schools and start sitting exams as early as grade 9. So there's a flexibility. There is no age limit really for them once they get into that particular age group where they can start doing the exams. So they start at grade 9, some of them grade 10 or grade 11. And the out of school population can also sit the examinations.
Okay, can I ask one of my CXC colleagues to just further explain in terms of the CAPE subjects, the unit 1 and unit 2, because I think we're as you mentioned there on this slide with West accepting 8, and Mr. Rose mentioned that for freshman matriculation you can get some credits off for level 1, but if you have level 1 and 2, it may lead to more credits being afforded and maybe getting a year to almost 2 years of credit if you have those. So can you just give some clarity so everyone understands the unit 1 and unit 2?
So for CAPE, the syllabus itself is divided into 2 units. Each unit has 3 modules, and each unit covers a segment of the entire program. So the content to be covered for units 1 to 3 would be on that particular content area within that same discipline. And then for unit 2, modules 1 to 3, the students will do additional content coverage. So a student can do unit 1 because of the focus of that particular unit and leave with enough coverage to move into a tertiary program with adequate foundational and above foundational knowledge to pursue studies in that particular area. So if they're going to be awarded a CAPE associate degree, for example, they would have to complete a cluster of 10 subjects. And some of the subjects only have one unit. For example, Caribbean studies, communication studies, or integrated math. And across the CAPE subjects, we have the students completing the core or specializations. As Dr. Cato said, if the student's interest is in business, for example, they would complete subjects around that field of business. So they may be doing accounting, economics, and so on. If it's science, they would be completing subjects within that discipline, biology, chemistry, and so on. So the students who have done Unit 1 would not have covered extensively everything that relates to that particular discipline until they have covered Unit 2, which is why there's a difference in the number of credits awarded when they transition to the university level. So at the university, they would look at it on a case-by-case basis. A student who comes with just one unit will not get the same level of exemption as a student who comes with 2 units of the subject. Dr. Cato, do you want to expand on that?
Just to add that the syllabus is designed in such a way that their Unit 1 and Unit 2 are separate course of studies. So students also have the flexibility of taking a Unit 2 before Unit 1 or simultaneously. And all these are affected by timetabling and resource issues at schools. So there's some years when they offer just Unit 2, other years they offer Unit 1. And so we allow students to be able to take whatever unit they can take at the time. And if they can manage both, they register for both as well. So there's no restriction where that is concerned. And the entire CXC program allows for flexibility depending on what students think that they can handle. Because at the end of it, they have to meet the criteria. So once students meet that criteria, they are awarded the appropriate grade. So there's no restriction where that is concerned.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions following up this topic, or any other areas that you would like to ask a question about? Feel free to do so. One other thing, Mr. Rose mentioned articulation agreements. And for me, I think that's something new that I learned today, that recognition that institutions can develop articulation agreements directly with CXC. Do you just want to speak more to that?
Yes, as it relates to articulation agreements, it's an agreement with the individual institutions, and we have a list on our website. And this is where the institution undergoes a mapping process to ensure that they're clear as it relates to equivalencies. And what we've seen over the years with every articulation agreement is that the Caribbean students who approach a US university, Canadian university, they tend to have received credits as a result of that process. So the mapping process is critical, and they'll work very closely with Mrs. Jack's team in the syllabus and curriculum development unit. And so it's whether an institution is interested in that. Some institutions may not sign an articulation agreement. They prefer to go through the mapping process and produce their equivalency charts. And we have a list there as well. So what we found over the years as well, an institution might contact CXC to say, we have conducted our mapping process. We've looked at the syllabuses, we've conducted our mapping process, and we've produced our equivalency chart and would like CXC to review. And then we would also share that with the students who are seeking to matriculate to universities outside of the Caribbean. And just one of the points I wanted to also make was that, and I know sometimes it's usually after these sessions that one may have a question or two. So Mrs. Errol, if you could also just share my details and Mrs. Narsing. So any questions that may follow after this, we'll be pleased to respond to accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think someone earlier had asked about equivalency sheets, and so we would have further reinforced that possibility. So in addition to that now, well, I shouldn't say in addition, are there any more questions?
Hi, this is Angelique again. I know we're expecting the equivalency sheets. I just have a question from something we've seen maybe once or twice reviewing transcripts. So I completed CXC and CAPE in Barbados, so I know that typically we receive the grades in terms of grade 1, grade 2, etc. But is there ever a situation where you provide the candidate with a percentage grade? Because we've seen like the student or applicant indicate CSAC as the certificate, but then they list a numerical grade instead of like the Roman numeral grade 1, 2, and so on. So is it always reported and provided to the candidate as a grade 1, grade 2, or do you ever provide a percentage grade to the candidate?
We don't provide a percentage grade. We provide a description, and when Mr. Rose went through the CSAC earlier, he had a description of what the grade 1, each grade band means. Students have demonstrated competence of that student. So that is how it is reported. It's never done by numerical value attached to the grade.
Okay, thank you. That's what we were thinking, but I guess in those cases, we may assume on our end, maybe the student is reporting their like final class grades. So I just wanted to clarify.
Any other questions? Okay, I would have put the email contacts for both two email contacts or CXC colleagues in the chat. So for those of you who have further questions that you may wish to ask, you are free to contact them. And I would just ask if there is anything else from our CXC end that you think that needs to be shared to our higher education institutions and advisors at this moment. I'll just give you an opportunity to do that as we wrap up today's session.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for putting this together and getting the group together to do it. I found it really helpful and really appreciate everyone's time, effort, and energy to make this happen. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
And may I just add from the assessment perspective that our subjects, we do a holistic assessment. So for most subjects, we offer 3 papers. There's some variety depending on the nature of the subjects, like the practical subjects may have another component, but generally we offer a multiple choice, a written paper where students would demonstrate that their strengths and their ability to express. So in that paper, we would be assessing higher order thinking, critical thinking, and then we offer the SBA, the school-based assessment, and that's the component that is done by the students in the school, guided by the teacher. So that's the opportunities for the teacher to give feedback to the students, so then at the end, the student can produce a product that is more enriched, and some allow students to be able to do a reflection. So when we put the 3 papers together, we really assess everything in its entirety. The multiple choice allow us to assess the breadth of the syllabus, because on a 60-item test, we can assess 60 different objectives. So at the end of it, we have total coverage. We try to ensure that all of our exams, we have at least 80% coverage of the syllabus, so that it's not focused on any one particular area, so that if the student didn't prepare that area, they would fail. There's enough so that the student who would have studied the entire syllabus would be able to earn an acceptable grade. For the more practical subjects like physical education and sport, for example, and we have theater arts and we performing arts, they're heavily weighted on that production component. So students, we have external moderators who go out and they assess students actually doing the performance. So in addition to a written paper, they're being assessed in that authentic way. So at the end of it, whatever program students choose to take, we have a holistic assessment, so that the grade that is awarded overall represents the student's true ability.
Thank you, Dr. Cato. I don't know if Mrs. Jack has any comments she'd like to make at this point.
Yes, I just want to reinforce that our syllabuses are rigorous, and the process to develop our syllabuses is rigorous. We do engage in extensive research. We do have surveys being done across the region. We have focus group discussions, research. We have special subject matter specialists participating in the process. We use a collaborative approach. And so we believe our syllabuses compete with the best in the world. And when our students complete syllabuses at grades 10, 11, and grades 12 and 13, they would have been given adequate foundation to segue into the tertiary levels. And our students have been found to have a very strong foundation because of the exposure, the skills and competencies that they would have developed through exposure to our syllabuses. So we want to validate the product and to recommend that the students who would have been exposed to the syllabuses are well placed to matriculate to any organization across the world. As Mr. Rose would have shown, the feedback from some of our partners, and we stand by our products. So we encourage you to give our students the kind of advantages that should come with completing syllabuses at CXC.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack, and I think that's very important points made by both you and Dr. Cato. CXC qualifications are accepted across the world from Ivy League universities right across the board as well. And I think I also referenced UCAS in the UK, they're clearinghouse and credential assessment agencies from both the USA and Canada. I'd like to also reiterate if there are any further questions following this webinar, that you can reach out to us, and to thank Education USA, and in particular, Mrs. Andrea Errol and her colleagues at the US Embassy, and appreciation also to Mrs. Jack again, Dr. Cato, and my colleagues from Marketing and Client Relations and Public Relations. It has been a privilege to spend time with you today, and we look forward to sharing other information in the future. Thank you.
And thank you again for so willingly agreeing to participate in this session. We know that you are at a very busy point. Well, for those of us in the Caribbean, we are at a very busy point. And so we really thank you for the time that you spent to help to clarify some of the issues, and I'm sure you will get questions afterwards. And I think every one of us in here, even those of us who reside in the Caribbean, went through the CXC system, even I did CXCs back then, that we would have even learned something new, and that would better help us to advise the students who come to our varying centers across the region. So thank you and the team for providing this opportunity, or for allowing us to be able to provide such an opportunity for our colleagues in the US. The question was asked about the recording. For those who missed anything, their recording is available. The recording will be available on the YouTube channel. But you can also make a request. So the YouTube channel is the I probably should write that down, the NCAC, REAC. Let me put that in the chat. But those of you who would like to request the recording, could you please put your information in the chat, and so it will be sent directly to you. So if you need to get the recording, you can send it directly to the chat, put your information in the chat, or you can write, and you would have had varying email addresses. You can write back, and then from there, and I think I put in the chat an email address for Melina Diaz. You can also contact her to have it sent. So we're giving you a number of ways in which you can access this information. And thank you very much. I am trying to find my information. Thank you very much for attending this session, and I do hope that we will see the benefits redound to the students that we serve in our various areas. Thank you again, everyone, and have a safe day wherever you are located. And we are very warm here in the Caribbean, and we want to share some of that warmth with you.
Thank you again.
Thank
And
you,
have a good
everyone.
day.
Have a good day.
Bye.